Welcome to Your American Dream. I'm Anisha Jennings, and today I'm so excited to welcome Kendall Fletcher, an independent producer and storyteller dedicated to reshaping the narrative of inclusion in film and television. Kendall's career spans incredible experiences at SNL, FX, ABC, and Hillman Grad, and her recent projects include the 2024 Sundance hit DIDI and All That We Love, which premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival. She is also co producing the documentary Blacked Out Dreams, a Sundance Doc Fund recipient, and also developing a television series with Yoruba Saxon David Oyelowo. Beyond her impressive body of work, Kendall is passionate about amplifying voices often left unheard and building stories that reflect the fullness of our shared human experience. Welcome, Kendall. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to, learn all about your journey into the films. So tell us a little bit about your initial journey on how you started. What was your early life like? You were born in the US, but as a woman of color, as a child of immigrant parents, what was your early life like, and how did you get into films?
Yeah, totally. So I should also clarify that my parents aren't immigrants, but very excited about immigrant culture and have a lot of friends who are immigrants as well. So just wanted
Yes.
to clarify that.
Yes,
But
thank you.
I am from the suburbs of Philadelphia. I actually went to Quaker school for my, 6th grade through 12th grade, so I'm not a Quaker also, but it was a really cool experience, and when I first got to college, I went to NYU. I wanted to be the smallest possible fish in the biggest possible pond, and I feel like
Mhm.
New York City is a great place for that, and I think for me, I initially thought I wanted to be a publicist because at the time, Scandal was a very popular show, and I saw everything that Olivia Pope did, and I was like, "Ooh, I wanna do that." But I quickly learned that that path wasn't for me, and much respect for everyone who works in that space. I think what was harder for me is just experiences where, when you're a publicist somewhere, you have to represent whatever the project or client is,
Mhm.
and sometimes that can be a little bit trickier if it is a situation where you might not fully stand by, we'll say, everything that that client represents. But again, there's a lot of great places that don't have that. And there's a lot of great publicists that, do great work. But I think for me, I just wanted to be in the room as the ideas were being generated. Also, the States me, but when I was in college and kind of like figuring out what I wanted to do, like the Kendall Jenner Pepsi ad. Do you remember that? Where it's a really funny ad where she essentially solves all the social justice issues by handing like a police officer a Pepsi. And it's just
Oh,
like a very not great commercial. But I bring that up to say, like, wanting to be somebody who's in those rooms so that I can kind of speak up when those types of things happen and I can be like, hey, y'all, like, maybe we try something else to promote Pepsi that still has the same energy.
yes.
But I think I realized that I enjoy the ideation stage a lot. And while I'm not a writer myself, I discovered because, again, for college, I was a communications major. So I didn't really understand the creative professions, if you will, within film and television. And
Uh-huh.
so I had heard of this thing called development, but it was always like sexy and amorphous, and I didn't actually know what it meant other than it was development. And later finding out, like, oh, so this is essentially like having opinions on the content that you're consuming and the scripts that you're reading, and all of those components, I think was really exciting to me. And being able to work closely with creatives is something that I also really enjoy, especially creatives of color and telling our stories and acting as an advocate, I think also is really important to me to the best of my ability because I think there so many people have stories of just, like, trying to tell a story from a certain perspective and then getting the note
Mhm.
of, like, "Well, why don't we change the entire cultural identity of this
Right.
story to be more appealing to a specific audience that is not necessarily the intended audience?" And so, I think for me, has kind of been my North Star of just finding projects and voices that I love and advocating for them, and I like connecting the dots too of kind of the way I describe my type of producer because there's also a lot of different kinds of producers, but
Mhm.
I like to think of it as kind of like if you know, like, the Avengers, like Nick Fury, where he kind
Yes.
of, you know, sets up who goes on the mission, like, not every Avenger goes on every mission, and so it's
Right.
determining, like, based on the mission or the project in front of me, who are the best kind of Avengers to help bring this across the finish line, and so I do enjoy kind of connecting those dots as well, and, it's been so exciting as well to see so many of my friends begin to, pop off in their own careers and be able to go to them and be like, "I have a cool idea from this writer that I'm excited about," and, they're excited to hear it, so definitely
Awesome.
I don't know if that answered your
Yes,
question.
absolutely. So what inspired you to get into the communications major? Did you like always have this dream of being in films or being in this line, or how did that develop for you from maybe like your early life?
Yeah, so definitely. The Olivia Pope element, I think, was a big driver in why I wanted to study communications and
Mhm.
better understand what makes something popular because there's so much content that is released on a common basis that it's like, what is the differentiator between the things that are really making waves and creating buzz versus the things that are still really great but maybe aren't getting seen as much? And so much of that comes down to the communications marketing aspect of things. And so being able to understand more of how that works has definitely helped inform me as I move as a producer and consider projects of just kind of like how do I describe this project to people in a way that is succinct and understandable, even if it's like a very high concept complex thing, what does it boil down to and how can I market this project essentially just on my end as a producer to something that, resonates with people and connects with what the market is looking for.
Makes sense. So, as being in immigrant culture, and we generally have this idea of being, there's very traditional streams of careers that you have to go to. How did your family handle, or what was the reaction for your career path? What did your parents or your family think about it?
Yeah, I was very fortunate that my parents, when it came time to choosing a major in college, they were like, "You can study underwater basket weaving. You just need to get the degree," and, kind of gave me the flexibility to figure out my own path, which I really appreciate because I know
Beautiful.
that and I have friends who have kind of been told, like, "You can only I won't help you out unless you study, these things," and I'm fortunate that my parents have openly embraced my creativity, especially, like, given the unpredictable nature of being kind of more of a freelance producer in the sense that, like, I'm not in-house right now, so going from project to project, kind of building momentum from things from the ground up, and it's a very rewarding process, and I think that this year I have been able to hit some of the biggest highs of my career, but it's also, like, again, being a freelancer and being a producer, it's a lot of, like I joke with people, it's like a lot of monopoly money where it's like,
Yeah.
theoretically, I could have
Yes.
this much, but until it gets made, it's just a theoretical situation. So,
Makes sense.
my parents have been really supportive though too of, like, my desire and passion to break out into
Beautiful.
the space. I'm really lucky, I have good
Beautiful. So you've worked at incredible places like SNL, ABC, Hillman Grad, FX. How did those early experiences shape your perspective as a producer? And how did you get those opportunities? What would your advice be for, like, people in these majors, communication majors, and if they are looking to get into places like these, what would be your advice and what was your journey like?
Yeah, I would say for me, one of the biggest things that was helpful for me is I joined my school's entertainment business club,
Okay.
and it had a lot of different folks who were also interested in entertainment that were able to, kind of talk about this exact thing of like how to best move forward. There were panels with awesome folks, and I got a lot of advice and insight through that process, and also got internships through that as well. So that was definitely like a huge factor for me in terms of
Mhm.
that kind of early level. Although with SNL specifically, my dad taught me an important life lesson early on, which is let them tell you no. And I didn't
Mhm.
know anyone there. I didn't have any connections, but I just cold applied and was selected. So I think it all goes to show like, don't count yourself out before you've even applied to the opportunity or taken a chance on trying the thing, because I think a lot of folks, and especially women and people of color in general, kind of get in our own heads and are like, "Oh, we're not, we don't meet all of the qualifications, or we don't, check all of these boxes, so, I'm not gonna take the chance and apply." But I think applying anyway
Yeah,
has been something that has
absolutely.
rewarded me for sure.
Perfect. Yes. So that is true with in any industry, any career path is to network and keep applying and not to count yourself out. So thank you for sharing that. So you've become known for producing stories centered on inclusion and authenticity. What does that mean to you?
To me, it honestly just means stories and perspectives that we haven't seen as much. But there
Hmm.
is, I think we've been proven time and time again, there's such an appetite for those stories, but also like in a world where we're getting a million different sequels and reboots and, all of those things, I get especially excited by stories and voices that feel like something I haven't seen before, that feel new and also the past, like, I would say year and a half that I have been independent and on my own, I've really cultivated, like, my own taste, because
Hmm.
I typically have filtered my taste through wherever I've been in-house of, these folks are looking for, like, this type of thing, and so kind of filtering out, obviously, my own taste factors, but it's more like, I can read something, still realize that, it might not be my cup of tea, but it works for the company, so being able to just have no filters on and determine like what do I like and what kind of content do I gravitate towards has been really fulfilling. And I think for me, all of the projects that I'm working on, like the documentary that I am associate producing, is about a group of Black boys in Flint, Michigan, who are coming of age, but it's not like a traumatic story, because I think so much of what we've seen from Flint is like, my friends and I have a term that we call trauma porn, which is like things that kind of feel, the best way to describe, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it, but more just things that feel more like a less from a lens of empowerment and more
Hmm.
lens of just like pulling at your heartstrings in a way that
Yeah.
feels like we're focusing on the trauma and not these people as unique, authentic individuals. And so I think this piece stays away from that, which is great. And, still acknowledges the reality of and what's happened there, but, gives life and agency and autonomy to these subjects, which is something that just for me as a producer, like I've realized I've driven more towards, I don't know, just projects that again feel like a new perspective and a new voice. And so that is an example. And I think also I've realized I really think some of the best commentary on social issues is done through like the horror genre. So I've noticed that I've gravitated towards a lot of genre stories and immigrant genre stories, because I feel like it kind of offers a perfect way to explore greater issues of identity and belonging, but through the context of, hiding the medicine in the popcorn, as we call it, where it's like,
Yes.
it's entertaining, but also, it has something to say, and it's not hitting you over the head with it either, but it's more just like,
Right.
acknowledging and exploring that territories. I don't know if
Got it.
I answered your question.
Yes, yes, you did. So you worked on major projects like DD and All That We Love. What was it like being part of productions that resonated so deeply at festivals like Sundance and Tribeca?
Yeah, so that is all the principals over at Unapologetic Projects, which is the last company that I was in-house at, and they're the ones who, were driving the charge for that, and so being able to have those be the first film projects that I worked on, I think is really special, and the people that I met on those projects, I'm still connected with to this day. I think it also informed me a lot of just, like, what goes into funding a film because I think especially for folks of color, it can be harder to figure out the pathways of people who are wanting to invest in our content and in
Hmm.
our stories, especially when it's like a first or second time filmmaker that doesn't have the established track record of like a Ryan Coogler or a, whoever. So I think it's definitely those experiences have taught me a lot of just like meeting creatives at their earlier stages or sometimes middle stages and kind of seeing at all stages what does it look like to have a project come together has been something that I think has been really valuable for me.
Beautiful. So, what's the most important lesson you've learned about collaboration and leadership in film production?
That's a great question. I think for me, it's been over time of like, I have learned that, sometimes this sounds this is gonna sound more crass, but sometimes it's better to let the car crash happen than to try to stop the car crash from happening, if that makes sense. Because I think there have been times just in my life where I've notice things that I'm trying to be like, "Oh, wait, this might not be the best idea," but then people, might feel like, "Wait, why is she not believing in me or trusting in what I'm trying to do?" So it's like
Right.
just letting people do what they need to do and just kind of being there to help in the, aftermath, and also I can be proven wrong as well. So, just because I think something might not be the best idea doesn't mean that it will actually be a great idea. That's definitely something that I've learned a lot about collaboration of just, like, really making sure that every person at every level, especially of a team, feels empowered and feels like their voice matters, I think is something that I've also learned because I think I've been in situations as well where I felt like I haven't been heard or my ideas have been shut down. And I think because of that, it's really important for me to create a space where everyone feels comfortable, speaking their opinion and
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. That is good to know for somebody who wants to get into this career path and who's looking to be in the communications or media industry. So, the film industry can be unpredictable. How do you stay grounded and continue to grow creatively and personally?
yeah, so it is the Wild West. And I think that there's a lot of acknowledgement that the current system isn't working for both film and TV, but the new pathways haven't necessarily been fully established yet. And I think that there's
Mhm.
a lot of opportunity within that. And in this exact phase and iteration, I think that the ones who will be rewarded are the people who are going to be very entrepreneurial and make the solutions versus just waiting for the masses to eventually convert to whatever those new pathways are. I've been fortunate to see a few people kind of doing their own versions of that, being witness to that in a really cool way, and it feels like a really empowering time um,
Mhm.
in that way. But of course, it's like figure it like the shift to the new systems and all of that will take time, and again, we don't even necessarily know who the new players are yet, but there are exciting things out there, I think, and as time continues on, I think we'll start to see more and more new voices in the media space.
So, how do you stay grounded and continue your personal growth?
I think I stay grounded because I'm just a girl. I don't know, like, I don't really think that I am necessarily the type of person like I'm smart enough to know when people are tuning into a film that I'm working on, they're tuning into it for the writing and the director and the cast and like not because I am producing it. And again, I actually prefer more of a behind the scenes role. The anonymous nature of being a producer, I really enjoy, but still being able to work with the filmmakers while also remembering one of the best pieces of advice I received is it's really easy to let your head get big, but it's very hard to bring it back down. So knowing
Yes.
that and being constantly aware of that, I think is also something that has guided me as well.
Perfect. So you worked across both creative and business sides of production. How do you balance the two?
I mean, it also depends, I think, too, on what is the project, because I think in some projects I wear more of a logistical hat, and then in other projects I wear more of a creative hat. Typically, I wear both. I would say I really just take it task by task,
Got it.
see, when I'm doing things, what makes sense, kind of order of prioritization, all of those things.
Beautiful. So, what advice do you have for aspiring filmmakers or producers who want to break into the industry with integrity and purpose?
Yeah, I would say get to know I know this is, like, something people have probably heard before, but just getting to know your peer network. I would say my peers are one of my biggest resources, and I think when people first get into the industry, they think like, "Oh, I need to go straight to the SVP or the VP and, like, network with that person," but it's really, like, you know, the people who are sitting at the desk next to you are the people that, are gonna be going through the motions just as you are, and it's already been so exciting to, like I am a personal believer as well of, like, be the least successful person that you know, and I'm happily the least successful person that I know of, like, my friends and industry folks, and I think that's also something that is incredibly motivating when somebody who I look up to and admire considers me a peer, where it's like someone who is super, like, in my opinion, super successful, objectively super successful, sees me as a peer. I feel like that is also really rewarding for me as well. So I would say that and also be open to new avenues. I think,
Hmm.
again, because right now things are so in flux, be open to the fact of like, even if you want to do film, maybe it might not have a typical distribution setup.
Got
Or you might collaborate with a brand or a digital creator, or, there are so many different new and emerging pathways too that I would just say don't get caught up on, oh, I need to do this the traditional way because that is, the most way that everyone is most familiar with. Just be open to like, do you want your project to reach people? And do you want to, make money from it? And if that is the case, it might take you down a different path than, a traditional streaming or theatrical release, and just being open to all different types of people from all different parts and facets of the industry and even adjacent industry.
Yeah, beautiful. So, what does the American dream mean to you as a creative?
Wow. I mean, I think to me, it means autonomy and agency, like the ability to, I think what a lot of creatives, I think, work towards is just the ability to be really selective of the projects that you choose and to be able to have enough to sustain yourself that, you can be like, oh, I'm only doing this year, I'm only doing one feature, or this year I'm doing, two or three. Like just the autonomy and agency over the types of projects that I'm producing and when and how and all of those things, I think is ultimately what I would be working towards. But I think, yeah,
Beautiful. So, if somebody wants to get in touch with you to either learn from you or work with you, what's the best way to reach you?
I would say LinkedIn. I'm very bad. I know that Instagram is kind of like what they're saying now is like millennial Facebook. I'm very bad at Instagram. I'm very bad at Facebook, but I'm pretty good at LinkedIn. Like that's the one that I'm consistently on, and TikTok, but, for the purposes of reaching out, LinkedIn is probably the best way.
Got it. Awesome. So, you also mentioned that you're on the quest to find the best gluten free bagel in LA. So, have you found it yet, or what's the story there?
I'm still searching. I have been gluten-free for a few years now. I have a gluten intolerance versus an allergy, so kind of like the lactose intolerant people. Sometimes I will be like, "I'll do it," but it is not the best if I continuously do it.
Hmm.
But I think I'm trying to think of places that I've been to. There's a deli that's that's in Beverly Hills. Like, I know exactly where it is, but I forget the name of it, which is not helpful for the purposes of this exercise. But there's a deli that I like going to in Beverly Hills that also not only has gluten-free bagels, but also has gluten-free pancakes. It's always exciting when I have options. Because a lot of
Yeah.
places it'll be like, here's your little seedy muffin. Have a nice day. And like I will eat the seedy muffin, but it's always exciting when there's like, oh, there's options. Not for bagels, but just in general. One of my favorite places to go is Parakeet, which is like a chain fast casual in LA. And I have been going there very, very frequently. And Parakeet has a lot of gluten-free options, and it also has a lot of like no refined sugar options, which I really like because I try to the best of my ability to avoid added sugar whenever I can. Like still having sugar, like I don't necessarily love the taste of the zero sugar stuff, but just more like
Yes.
it's sweetened with maple syrup or like, things like
Yes.
that. And I think that has a lot of options for me in a positive way where I am like, oh, I can like basically eat the whole menu. This is great.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your experience in this career path and for inspiring us. And if somebody's listening and wants to get into this field, thank you for your advice for them.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
As we close this conversation with Kendall Fletcher, I'm reminded that representation isn't just about being seen, it's about being understood. Kendall's work shows us the power of creating stories that honor truth, culture, and connection. If you're ready to share your story and elevate your brand through a platform that reflects your purpose, I'd love to help you design it. This is Anisha Jennings reminding you that your American dream is always worth producing. Until next time.